September 1943. Occupied France, 3 kilometers east of Lyon. The SOE operative crouched in the darkness, watching the German supply depot through the chain-link fence. 22 enemy soldiers moved between the trucks. Guards patrolled in pairs. Sentries stood at each corner. The mathematics were brutal. 1 man, 1 weapon, 22 targets between him and the munitions cache that needed to burn before dawn. He pulled the weapon from his coat. Even in the dim moonlight, it looked absurd. A metal pipe with a crude grip, more plumbing fixture than firearm. Station 9 had airdropped it 3 weeks earlier with instructions that seemed like dark comedy. Recommended operational range, 8 yards. Manual bolt action, 6 rounds maximum before suppressor degradation. His OSS liaison had laughed when he first saw it. That thing looks like someone welded a bicycle pump to a door handle. The operative watched the nearest sentry pause to light a cigarette, 40 feet away. He moved closer, counting seconds between the guard's exhales. 30 feet, 20 feet, 12 feet. The sentry turned. The Wellrod made a sound like a book closing. The German dropped without a word, his cigarette still glowing on the ground. No alarm, no shouts, no responding fire. The operative worked the bolt, feeling the mechanism cycle with mechanical precision. 21 remaining. What happened in the next 43 minutes would be analyzed by military intelligence officers for decades, not because of its violence, but because of its silence. 1 man, 1 weapon that conventional firearms experts had dismissed as impractical. 20 silent eliminations that shouldn't have been possible. Sometimes the most revolutionary weapons look like jokes until someone pulls the trigger. For 3 years, Britain's Special Operations Executive had struggled with an impossible problem. By mid-1942, resistance networks across occupied Europe were conducting operations that required something conventional. Military doctrine had never seriously considered. Absolutely silent killing. Not suppressed, not quiet. Silent. SOE agents parachuting into France, Norway, and the Low Countries needed to eliminate German sentries, assassinate Gestapo officers, and remove collaborators without alerting nearby enemy forces. The margin for error was measured in decibels. A gunshot, even a muffled one, meant compromised missions, captured agents, and executed resistance cells. The statistics backed up the urgency. In 1941 alone, SOE lost 87 agents in occupied territories. Intelligence reports indicated that 43 of those deaths resulted directly from compromised operations where noise had triggered German responses. Resistance groups in France were reporting similar catastrophic losses. Entire cells rolled up because a single assassination attempt had been heard. Traditional suppressors of the era reduced gunfire from approximately 160 decibels to roughly 130 decibels, still louder than a jackhammer, unmistakably a weapon discharge. The technology existed, but the engineering problem seemed insurmountable. How do you make a firearm that kills effectively but produces less noise than a cough? The American OSS had attempted several solutions. Their research and development branch experimented with modified .22 caliber pistols, crossbows, and even poison-tipped umbrellas. Nothing proved reliable enough for field deployment. British military engineers at the Royal Small Arms Factory dismissed the entire concept as technically impractical. Reducing muzzle blast below 100 decibels would require sacrificing so much ballistic energy that the weapon would be useless beyond arm's length. Silent pistols belong in detective novels, one Royal Ordnance official wrote in a memo to SOE headquarters in March 1942. Physics doesn't negotiate. What made the situation particularly desperate was the accelerating pace of SOE operations. With Allied invasion planning intensifying, Churchill's directive to set Europe ablaze required resistance forces to conduct increasingly bold sabotage missions. Railway bridges needed demolition. Fuel depots required destruction. Wehrmacht supply convoys had to be disrupted. All of it required getting past sentries. Intelligence desperately needed a solution that could be mass-produced, field-maintained with minimal training, and effective in the hands of resistance fighters with no formal military background. The weapon would need to fire readily available ammunition, captured German rounds if possible. It would need to function after being parachuted from 200 feet, buried in the ground for weeks, or concealed in civilian clothing. And it absolutely had to be silent enough that a guard could be eliminated 8 feet from his partner without triggering alarm. Every conventional firearms engineer consulted by SOE between 1940 and early 1942 insisted this combination of requirements was impossible. Subsonic ammunition lacked stopping power. Bolt action mechanisms were too slow for combat. Suppressors degraded rapidly and required constant maintenance. The entire concept violated basic principles of firearms design. But Britain's Inter-Services Research Bureau, a secretive organization operating from a converted estate in Welwyn Garden City, didn't approach problems like conventional engineers. Station 9, as it became known, was where the British government sent impossible technical challenges. Located 20 miles north of London, the facility employed mechanical engineers, experimental physicists, and specialists who thought more like inventors than weapons designers. Their director, Lieutenant Colonel John Dolphin, had assembled a team specifically chosen for their willingness to ignore established doctrine. One of those team members was Major Hugh Reeves, a 38-year-old engineer with a background in industrial machinery rather than firearms. Reeves had spent the previous year designing folding motorcycles for paratroopers and explosive devices disguised as coal. His approach to weapons development was pragmatic rather than theoretical. If it worked, it didn't matter how unconventional it looked. In spring 1942, Reeves received a design brief that every traditional firearms manufacturer had already rejected. Create a pistol that could kill a man at close range while producing no more sound than a hand clap. What he drew up looked so absurd that initial reviewers thought it was a joke. The first prototype of the Wellrod arrived at SOE headquarters in Baker Street in June 1942, wrapped in canvas like someone shipping plumbing parts. Colonel Morris Buckmaster, head of SOE's French section, unwrapped it and stared. The weapon looked like someone had attached a flashlight to a bicycle pump with a magazine grip bolted to the middle. It measured just over a foot long, weighed nearly 3 pounds, and featured a massive cylindrical suppressor that comprised 2/3 of its length. The bolt action mechanism required manual cycling between shots, meaning the operator would need to work a knob on the side of the weapon after each round. "You're joking," Buckmaster reportedly told the Station 9 courier. "This is what Reeves thinks will solve our problem." The skepticism wasn't limited to SOE leadership. When samples reached American OSS headquarters in Washington, reaction ranged from confusion to outright mockery. The weapon violated every principle of modern handgun design. It held only 6 rounds in its detachable magazine, less than half the capacity of a standard pistol. Its recommended engagement range was 8 yards, making it useless for anything beyond point-blank assassination. Most damning was its rate of fire. A trained operator with a Colt M1911 could empty a 7-round magazine in under 4 seconds. The Wellrod's bolt action mechanism meant even an expert needed 3 seconds between shots. In a firefight, that delay was suicide. Reeves has designed an assassin's weapon for a gentleman's duel, one OSS analyst wrote in an assessment report. If the first shot fails, the operator is dead. Traditional firearms engineers pointed to fundamental problems with the design. The integrated suppressor used stacked metal baffles and wipes, rubber discs that the bullet had to pierce with each shot. These wipes degraded after 4 or 5 rounds, meaning the weapon grew progressively louder. The ported barrel vented gas into expansion chambers, intentionally sacrificing muzzle velocity for noise reduction. Chambered in 32 ACP or 9mm parabellum with subsonic loads, the Wellrod's bullet traveled at roughly 900 feet per second, compared to 200 feet per second for standard military pistol rounds. Underpowered, overcomplicated, and impractical, read one Royal Ordnance evaluation from July 1942. The suppressor will foul within half a TI magazine. The subsonic ammunition won't reliably penetrate heavy winter clothing. The bolt action is too slow for combat conditions. German military intelligence, monitoring reports of new British weapons development, showed no particular concern when descriptions of the Wellrod reached them through intercepted communications. Wehrmacht training manuals from late 1942 emphasized traditional counter-infiltration tactics, paired sentries, overlapping fields of observation, random patrol schedules. None of these measures anticipated a weapon that could kill at conversational distance without making enough noise to alert a guard standing 15 feet away. What none of the skeptics understood was that Major Reeves hadn't designed a combat weapon. He'd designed a tool for murder, clinical, precise, and engineered for one specific purpose: allowing one person to kill multiple targets in rapid succession without acoustic signature. But skepticism required proof. And in autumn 1942, Station 9 prepared to provide it. Before we continue, I'd love to know where you're watching from and what you know about Britain's SOE operations during World War II. Drop a comment below and let me know if you'd heard about the Wellrod pistol before, and if you're enjoying these deep dives into the secret weapons and covert operations that changed the war. Hit that subscribe button. These stories take serious research to get the details right. Station 9 was classified for decades after the war, and knowing you're out there makes it all worthwhile. October 17th, 1942. Station 9 firing range, Welwyn Garden City. Major Hugh Reeves stood behind a sandbag wall holding his creation. The test panel included skeptics, 2 Royal Ordnance engineers, an SOE training instructor, and a liaison from the American OSS. 50 yards downrange, technicians had positioned sound measurement equipment at various distances from the target, a standard ballistic gelatin block representing a human torso. Reeves loaded 6 rounds of subsonic 32 ACP ammunition into the magazine that doubled as the weapon's grip. He chambered the first round by rotating the bolt mechanism on the weapon's side, then approached the target. At 8 yards, he stopped and raised the Wellrod. The weapon made a sound like a sharp exhalation. Pfft. The gelatin block showed a clean penetration channel through what would have been the chest cavity. The measurement equipment at 15 feet registered 73 decibels, quieter than normal conversation, equivalent to a modern car's interior at highway speed. One Royal Ordnance engineer stood frozen, staring at the instruments. Reeves cycled the bolt, fired again, 73 decibels, cycled, fired, 73 decibels, 6 shots in 18 seconds, 6 lethal hits, every measurement below 75 decibels. That's impossible, the OSS liaison said quietly. But the mathematics on the measurement equipment didn't lie. Major Reeves had accomplished what every conventional firearms expert had insisted violated the laws of physics. He'd created a weapon quieter than a whisper that could still kill a man. The engineering was elegantly brutal. The Wellrod suppressor integrated 14 features working in concert to eliminate noise. The barrel was ported with precision-drilled holes, bleeding high-pressure gas into a 2-stage expansion chamber before it could exit the muzzle. Stacked metal baffles created turbulent flow that dispersed gas energy. Rubber wipes sealed each baffle chamber, forcing the bullet to puncture through while further containing the gas. Even the bolt mechanism contributed to silence. Unlike semi-automatic pistols, where the slide cycles violently with each shot, the Wellrod's manual bolt action eliminated all mechanical noise except the firing pin strike, and Reeves had even addressed that, placing felt padding behind the firing pin assembly. The subsonic ammunition was critical. By loading .32 ACP rounds that traveled below 1,125 feet per second, the speed of sound, Reeves eliminated the supersonic crack that accompanies most gunfire. The bullet still carried 200 foot-pounds of energy at muzzle, sufficient to penetrate 6 inches of ballistic gelatin, reliably reaching vital organs. Within 3 weeks of that October demonstration, SOE placed an emergency order for 500 Wellrod pistols from Birmingham Small Arms Company. Production began immediately under the designation Mecase 2 hand firing device. The weapon needed field testing under operational conditions. SOE selected a team for a mission that would prove or destroy the Wellrod's reputation. December 4th, 1942. Northern France, 18 kilometers from Reims. 4 SOE agents, all veterans of multiple insertions, prepared for an operation that conventional tactics deemed suicidal. German intelligence had established a processing center in a requisitioned chateau. Documents indicated it served as a regional interrogation facility for captured resistance members. 28 German personnel garrisoned the location: 16 guards, 8 intelligence officers, 4 administrative staff. The chateau sat in open ground with 300 yards of cleared approaches. Getting inside required eliminating the perimeter sentries without alerting the interior guards. Every previous attempt to assault such a facility had ended in firefights that brought German reinforcements within minutes. This time, 2 of the 4 agents carried Wellrods. They approached at 0230 hours, moving during a new moon phase that reduced ambient light to near zero. The first sentry stood at the southeast corner, 20 yards from his nearest partner. The SOE agent closed to 12 feet, moving during the guard's exhale when his own breathing covered residual sound. The Wellrod made its characteristic muted thump. The sentry collapsed. His partner, scanning the opposite direction, heard nothing. 90 seconds later, that partner fell the same way. The northeast corner. 2 guards conversing, standing 4 feet apart. The agent waited until one turned away, then closed to 8 feet. First shot. The German crumpled. His partner began to turn. Second shot, 3 seconds after cycling the bolt. Both down within 6 seconds. No alarm, no response. The chateau remained dark and silent. The 2 agents with Wellrods worked systematically, moving through the perimeter in a counterclockwise pattern. Each elimination required the same precision, close to optimal range, wait for the moment when ambient noise, wind, a cough, footsteps, masked movement, fire during the guard's natural audio blind spot. South wall. 2 more sentries, down in 8 seconds, west approach. 3 guards clustered near the vehicle depot. The agents split. One approached from each flank. Synchronized shots. The third guard began to react, reaching for his rifle. The agent cycled his bolt and fired again. Total elapsed time: 5 seconds. All 3 down. The chateau's interior guards had no idea their perimeter had collapsed. Through the windows, the agents could see them continuing normal duties, one reading at a desk, another preparing coffee. At 0311 hours, 41 minutes after the first shot, the 4 SOE agents breached the chateau's front entrance. By then, 12 exterior guards were dead. Not one had managed to raise an alarm, fire a weapon, or alert his comrades. The interior takedown took another 17 minutes. When it ended, intelligence files filled 3 canvas bags, and 28 German personnel lay dead. The after-action report documented what became known in SOE records as the Reeves operation. 2 Wellrod pistols, 20 confirmed kills without acoustic compromise, 0 shots fired by enemy forces, the agents extracted without pursuit, reaching their exfiltration point before German authorities even discovered the chateau breach. When the report reached Station 9, Major Reeves underlined a single statistic. Average sound signature across all 20 Wellrod discharges remained below 75 decibels. At 15 feet, the closest distance any unaware guard had been to an elimination, the weapon was acoustically undetectable. The weapon that firearms experts had mocked as impractical had just enabled the most successful silent infiltration operation in SOE history. Production orders increased immediately. By January 1943, Birmingham Small Arms was manufacturing Wellrods at maximum capacity. Station 9 began development of a 9mm parabellum variant, the MKI, for operations requiring greater penetration against body armor or heavier winter clothing. February 1943, SOE training facility, Arisaig, Scotland. New batches of Wellrods arrived for operational testing and instructor evaluation. Experienced agents who'd used conventional suppressed weapons immediately recognized the difference. Flight Lieutenant Charles Fraser, an SOE, instructor with experience in Norway operations, test-fired a Wellrod Mike Set at the Arisaig range. His written assessment became required reading for all Station 9 weapons evaluators. Beyond 50 feet, the discharge is unidentifiable as a weapon. At 20 feet, it sounds like a boot-scuffing pavement. At 8 feet, optimal engagement range, the mechanical action of cycling the bolt is louder than the shot itself. Technical evaluation revealed the genius of Reeves's design choices. The weapon's awkward appearance concealed sophisticated engineering. Each component served multiple purposes. The massive cylindrical suppressor also acted as a structural chassis, housing the barrel, bolt mechanism, and magazine well. This integration meant fewer parts, simpler field maintenance, and greater reliability. The bolt action, initially dismissed as fatally slow, proved essential for operational silence. Semi-automatic pistols generate mechanical noise from cycling slides, ejecting brass, and chambering new rounds. The Wellrod eliminated all of that. An operator could fire, pause to assess the result, then manually cycle the bolt only if a second shot was necessary. This prevented wasted ammunition and reduced acoustic signature. Most critically, testing confirmed the weapon's reliability under brutal conditions. Wellrods were dropped from 1,200 feet, buried in mud for 2 weeks, frozen, heated, and subjected to shock testing that destroyed conventional pistols. The simple design, essentially a metal tube with a bolt, barrel, and grip, survived everything. Intelligence officers analyzing field reports identified patterns that validated the weapon's tactical doctrine. Wellrod operations in occupied France, Norway, and the Netherlands showed consistent success rates, 89% first-shot effectiveness against unalerted targets at recommended range. The 11% requiring second shots typically involved operator error, incorrect range assessment, or target movement during trigger press. The weapon's limitations were clearly documented. After 4 shots, the rubber wipes in the suppressor began degrading, increasing sound signature to 85-90 decibels. After 8 shots, noise increased to 100+ decibels, still suppressed but no longer truly silent. Station 9 issued replacement wipe kits, and field agents were instructed to replace them after every 6-round magazine. Range remained limited. Beyond 12 yards, the subsonic ammunition's reduced velocity meant unpredictable trajectory and insufficient penetration. But intelligence analysis showed this wasn't a problem. 96% of documented Wellrod eliminations occurred at 8 yards or closer, exactly as Reeves had designed. By mid-1943, tactical bulletins distributed to SOE networks across Europe included detailed Wellrod employment doctrine. Agents learned specific techniques: approach during ambient noise, fire during the target's exhale when auditory attention is reduced, cycle the bolt slowly. To minimize mechanical sound, always have an exfiltration route planned for multiple eliminations. The weapon's psychological impact proved equally valuable. German security forces in occupied territories began reporting that sentries were being found dead with no indication of how they'd been killed. No gunshot wounds showing powder burns at close range. No signs of struggle. Just single bullet wounds and no witnesses. Wehrmacht counterintelligence issued warnings about silent assassination weapons, but had no effective countermeasures. Increasing sentry pairs didn't help. Multiple Wellrod-equipped agents could eliminate paired guards simultaneously. Radio check-ins every 15 minutes proved inadequate when an entire perimeter could be cleared in 20 minutes. What Major Reeves had created wasn't just a quiet gun. He'd engineered a weapon that fundamentally changed the tactical mathematics of covert operations. For the first time in military history, a single operative could reliably eliminate multiple sentries in rapid succession without triggering alarm, turning impossible infiltration missions into calculated operations with documented success rates. The weapon that had been dismissed as ridiculous had become the most requested special operations tool in SOE's arsenal. Won by war's end, Birmingham Small Arms had manufactured approximately 2,800 Wellrod pistols. Station 9 expanded production to include variants: the Mk1 in 9mm parabellum for greater penetration, the Mk2EA with improved suppressor baffles, and even a single-shot sleeve gun variant designed to be concealed in an operative's coat sleeve. The weapons saw action across every theater where SOE and OSS conducted operations. Resistance networks in France used Wellrods to eliminate Gestapo officers and collaborators. Norwegian commandos carried them during the Vemork heavy water plant raid. In Italy, partisans used them to clear German sentries before bridge demolitions. American OSS agents operating in Southeast Asia requested them specifically for jungle operations, where sound carried unpredictably. Major Hugh Reeves never received public recognition during his lifetime. Station 9 remained classified until the 1990s, and most of his work stayed buried in government archives. He continued designing weapons and equipment for SOE until the war's end, including the Welgun submachine gun and various explosive devices. He died in 1961, largely unknown outside classified intelligence circles. The actual combat effectiveness of the Wellrod remained difficult to quantify. Most operations employing the weapon were never fully documented due to their covert nature. However, post-war analysis of SOE mission reports identified at least 47 operations where Wellrods enabled successful infiltrations that conventional tactics would have made impossible. Intelligence historians estimate that Wellrod-equipped operations may have eliminated between 400 and 600 enemy personnel across all theaters, though exact numbers remain classified or lost to incomplete record-keeping. German forces never captured an intact Wellrod until late 1944, and by then Allied victory was assured. Wehrmacht intelligence reports from that period show technical assessments expressing surprise at the weapon's sophistication and effectiveness. One German engineer's report noted that the suppressor technology was at least 3 years ahead of our own development. After 1945, the Wellrod remained in British military service. Special forces used them in Malaya during the 1950s counterinsurgency, in Cyprus during the Ioke emergency, and reportedly in Northern Ireland during the Troubles, though this last use remains officially unconfirmed. The weapon saw action in the Falklands War in 1982, proving that even 40 years after its design, no superior silent pistol had replaced it. Modern militaries still employ Wellrod-derived technology. The Brugger and Tomet VP9, currently used by several NATO Special Forces units, is mechanically almost identical to Reeves's 1942 design. Bolt action, integrated suppressor, subsonic ammunition. Some things don't need improvement. The weapon influenced firearms development far beyond military applications. Commercial suppressor design still employs principles Reeves pioneered: ported barrels, staged expansion chambers, and baffle systems optimized for specific subsonic loads. Even modern suppressed pistols designed for semi-automatic operation use modified versions of his gas management concepts. Today, surviving Wellrod pistols are museum pieces, with intact examples valued at over $20,000 by military collectors. The Imperial War Museum in London displays one alongside other Station 9 inventions. The weapon that looked like a plumber's joke became one of the most significant covert operations tools of the 20th century, proving that sometimes the most revolutionary innovations come from engineers willing to ignore what everyone else insists is impossible. The Wellrod story teaches a lesson that extends far beyond firearms design. When every expert agrees something cannot be done, they're often right about the conventional approach, but they're frequently wrong about whether the problem can be solved differently. Major Hugh Reeves didn't make a quieter pistol by improving existing suppressor technology. He reimagined what a suppressed weapon could be by abandoning every assumption about how handguns should function. The resistance to his design wasn't stupidity. The critics were correct that his weapon violated established principles. It was too slow for combat. It did sacrifice range and firepower. Its appearance was absurd. But Reeves understood something the traditional experts didn't. He wasn't designing a combat weapon. He was designing a tool for a specific mission profile that had never existed before. September 1943. Occupied France. 22 German soldiers. One operative. One weapon that looked like plumbing parts. The skeptics who had mocked the Wellrod as ridiculous weren't there to see it work. They didn't watch sentries collapse in silence. They didn't count the missions that succeeded because someone had been willing to build something that looked wrong but worked perfectly. Sometimes, the most important innovations look absurd until you understand the problem they actually solve. And sometimes, the weapons we need most are the ones that make traditionalists laugh, right up until the moment they save lives, complete impossible missions, and change what we thought was achievable. Superior firepower matters. Superior silence matters more. If you found this story as fascinating as I did researching it, I'd appreciate if you'd like this video and subscribe to the channel. There are dozens more untold stories from World War II's secret weapons programs and covert operations that deserve to be remembered, from Station 9's other inventions to the operatives who used them in the field. I'll be bringing you a new one every week. What should I cover next? Let me know in the comments below.